Today we're going to cover all the mono green mana dorks. These are cards that you can run in your mono green commander deck. All these cards can vary pretty greatly, so we're just going to ignore a lot of other abilities and focus mainly on if they tap for mana or not. Everything's kind of all over the place, so everything's just going to be in a mana value organization system. So we're going to start with a single green mana. We have Elvish Mystic, Fyndhorn Elves, and Llanowar Elves, all just tap to add 1 green mana. Llanowar Mentor, you pay a green and tap it, discard a card, and then you just make them Llanowar Elves that taps for green. Draga Tree Speaker, you have to level it up, but once you level it up from 1 to 4, it taps to add green, and at level 5 and up, all elves you control have that ability as well. Moving on to 1 and a green, we've got Bramble Familiar, Druid of the Cowl, Golden Hind, Heart Warden, Leaf Gilder, Arachi Sustainer, Susan Foreman, Vine Trellis, Werebear, Wirewood Elf, and Woodland Mystic. These all just tap for a single green mana. Scaled Nurturer taps to add green, but when you use it to cast a dragon, you gain 2 life. Root Rider Fawn taps to add a green, or you can use it as a filter. Devoted Druid taps to add a green, but you can put a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it. Kolvori, God of Kinship, does not add any mana, but the backside, the Ringheart Crest, taps to add green, only to cast the chosen creature type or a legendary spell. Quirion Elves taps to add green, or you tap to add a different chosen color. Elfheim Druid taps to add green, or you can tap it to add green for kicked spells. Orochi Merge Keeper taps to add green, but if it's modified, it taps to add green. Whisperer of the Wilds taps to add green, or you can tap it to add green if you have Ferocious. Leafkin Druid taps to add green, but if you control 4 more creatures, add green instead. Scorned Villager and Ulvenwald Captive both tap to add a green, but when they transform, Moonscarred Werewolf taps to add green, and Ulvenwald Abomination taps to add colorless. Priest of Titania taps to add green for each elf on the battlefield. Overgrown Battlement taps to add green for each creature with Defender you control. And Gyre's Sage taps to add green for each +1/+1 counter on it. Going to 2 and a green for the mana value. Runati Behemoth Caller taps to add green. I know it's got other abilities, we're just going to skip them. Llanowar Visionary taps to add a green, but it enters the battlefield to draw you a card. Druid of the Sacred Beaker taps to add green for each Crossbreed Labs watermark. Jugan Defends the Temple. This isn't a mana dork, but it creates a mana dork, and is basically just a Llanowar Elves. Jalanra, Caller of the Wirewood, taps to add green, and if you use it to cast a spell with CMC 6 or more, you draw a card. Nantuko Elder taps to add 1 and a green. Fyndhorn Elder and Greenweaver Druid both tap to add green. Viridian Joiner and Merowyn the Nurturer both tap to add green equal to their power. Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, gives all your tokens the ability to tap for green. Rishkar, Pima Renegade, gives all your creatures with counters tap to add a green. Sakelum Godspeaker, tap it and reveal any number of creatures with power 5 or more from your hand, and add a green for each of them. Moving on to 3 and a green mana value. Skyshroud Troopers taps to add a green. Canopy Tactician taps to add green. Karametra's Acolyte taps to add green equal to your devotion to green. Citadel Hierophants, all creatures you control gain tap to add a green. Undermountain Adventurer taps to add green, but you add 6 green if you've completed a dungeon. For the rest of this section, where the creatures only tap for green, all the CMCs are kind of all over the place. But we have Elvish Aberration, which taps to add green. Elvish Archdruid taps to add a green for each elf you control. Sachi, Daughter of Sashiro, gives all your shamans the ability to tap to add green. Freyalise, Llanowar's Fury, is not a mana dork, but her +2 ability makes Llanowar Elves. Rofellos, Llanowar Emissary, which is banned in Commander, taps to add green for each forest you control. You can probably understand why it's banned in Commander. Circle of Dreams Druid taps to add a green for each creature you control. Llanowar Tribe taps for green. Coppermere taps to add green. Cradle Clearcutter taps to add green equal to its power. Now the next section are green mana dorks that tap for just basically any color of mana or specific colors. Well, let's start with the 1 CMC in this section. Viridian Acolyte, you pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. So it's not really a dork, it's more of a filter, but hey, it does it. Birds of Paradise taps to add 1 mana of any color. Gilded Goose does the same, except you have to sacrifice a food to do it. Honored Hierarch also does the same, but it can only do it if it's renowned. Ixali's Lorekeeper taps to add 1 mana of any color for dinosaur spells and abilities. Delighted Halfling taps to add colorless, but it can also tap to add a mana of any color only to cast legendary spells, and then that spell can't be countered. Rift Sower technically costs 2 and a green, but you're probably going to suspend it for just a single green. It just taps for 1 mana of any color. Moving on to 1 and a green creatures, we have Armored Scrap Gorger, Drover of the Mighty, Intrepid Paleontologist, Llanowar Loam Speaker, Paradise Druid, Poison Dart Frog, Prize Pig, Reclusive Taxidermist, Sylvan Caryatid, Utopia Tree, and Woe's Pathfinder. All of these do the same thing and tap for a mana of any color. Beastcaller Savant and Humble Naturalist both tap to add mana of any color, but it can only be used to cast creature spells. Biophagus taps to add for any color, except if it's used to cast the creature spell, that creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. Mana Weft Sliver and Gemhide Sliver gives various slivers tap to add 1 mana of any color. Elysian Caryatid taps to add 1 mana of any color, but if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you add 2 mana of any 1 color instead. Sylvok and Quirion Explorers both tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land your opponent's control could produce. Harabaz Druid taps to add X mana of any 1 color, where X is the number of allies you control. Incubation Druid taps to add 1 mana of any type of a land you control could produce, but you add 3 of that color if it has a +1/+1 counter on it instead. Sanctum Weaver adds X mana of any 1 color, where X is the number of enchantments you control. Harvester Druid taps to add 1 mana of any color that a land you control can produce. And Joiner Adept gives all your lands the ability to tap for any color. Moving on to the 2 and a green CMCs, Deathbloom Gardener, Elvish Harbinger, Lifespring Druid, and Underseller Myconid all tap to add 1 mana of any color. Rosethorn Acolyte does the same, but you can filter green into any different color with its adventure side. Shaman of Forgotten Ways taps to add 2 mana of any combination of colors, only to cast creature spells. Weaver of Blossoms taps to add 1 mana of any color, but the backside, Blossom-clad Werewolf taps to add 2 mana of any 1 color. Somberwold Sage, tap it to add 3 mana of any 1 color, only to cast creature spells. Heronblade Elite and Kami of Whispered Hopes both tap to add X mana of any 1 color, where X is its power. Now to the 3 and a green CMCs. Accomplished Alchemist, Awakened Skyclave, Centaur, Nurturer, Dawnheart Rejuvenator, all tap to add 1 mana of any color. Oasis Ritualist, tap it to add 1 mana of any color, but you can also exert it to add 2 mana of any 1 color. Wirewood Channeler, you tap it to add X mana of any 1 color, where X is the number of elves on the battlefield. Toxicrene gives all lands the ability to tap for any color, except they lose all their other abilities. Now we have 1 green CMCs. Moldiah Channelers, as long as the top card of your library is a land, it has tap to add 2 mana of any 1 color. And Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, pay a green, tap it to add X mana of any combination of colors, where X is the greatest power among your creatures. Woo! Okay, I hope I covered them all. There are 108 of these, which is just wild. Green is clearly the best for Rampage, and this is just the mana dorks. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you join me next time. I'm yawning for your weekly dose of magic. See ya!